Welcome back to my series exploring Jupiter in the 10th house. We're up to episode 6, so we're going to be talking about Jupiter in the 10th house in Leo. And our example chart is Diana Ross. In the first episode, we established the basic concept of what Jupiter in the 10th house should be interpreted as. If you want to know the details of that, the link will be in the description below. But for now, just to summarize with the shorthand keywords, Jupiter in the 10th is sage-like, transparent, and famous. Now, we need a similar summary for Jupiter in Leo, and then we'll be able to interpret Jupiter in the 10th house in Leo. I've also done a video on Jupiter in Leo. I'll put a link to that video in the description below as well, in case you want to get more details on it. For now, we can summarize it very succinctly. Jupiter in Leo is basically an authority figure. Now, knowing what we know about Jupiter in the 10th and Jupiter in Leo, we might be able to interpret Jupiter in Leo in the 10th house. But we can go a little bit further if we use the whole sign house system, which I highly recommend. In this system, if Jupiter is in Leo in the 10th house, then it has to be the second lord and the fifth lord. So the 10th house is the house of the public, the second house is the house of your voice, and the fifth is your expressiveness, your creativity. So if you're taking the lord of the voice and expressiveness and putting it in the public, it signifies really being able to express yourself vocally. Another way of looking at this is that the second house is the house of knowledge and the fifth house is the house of intellect. If you take the lord of knowledge and intellect and put them in the house of the public or career, then you probably get a person who has an intellectual career. In other words, the career involves their skills, their talents, their intellect. Now, with these three sets of symbolisms, we can look for synergy between the three and use that to really understand what Jupiter in the 10th house, Leo, should be interpreted as. For example, authority figure is like the whole summary of Jupiter in Leo. And Jupiter in the 10th house has a lot of that same thing. We can shorthand it as famousness, but it also has to do with the sage-like quality, which means you have a big impact. So this person with Jupiter in Leo is a leader. They will be very good in the spotlight. They really are happy to be the focus of attention, but they don't like to be ignored. And they probably don't really operate as well when they're not in a leadership position. They probably have less comfort when they're in peer situations. Another thing was the second and fifth lord in the 10th house was very, very vocal. And Jupiter in the 10th house can support that because it's very transparent. And transparent was our shorthand keyword for the openness of Jupiter in the 10th house, the ability for what's inside to come out and be shown and not be hidden. So Jupiter in the 10th house in Leo is quite expressive, vocally especially. They like to put their feelings and their opinions, etc., into words and express those words to share them. Finally, the second and fifth lord in the 10th house has to do with a skilled career, and Jupiter in the 10th house is all about being sagacious, which basically means a skilled career. So definitely Jupiter in Leo in the 10th house is a talented person whose career should not really be labor or just sales or something. It should be something about their talents. As I mentioned, an example of a famous person with Jupiter in Leo in the 10th house is Diana Ross. What a fantastic illustration of this authority figure dynamic going on here, the leadership figure that's going on. And what I was saying isn't really so good in peer situations, is quite demanding. Also, even more obviously, what a great example of someone who's so vocally expressive and talented. So there is a lot going on in her chart, which is we should have expect that because this woman is extremely successful and wealthy. So where do you see that in this chart? Kind of everywhere. It's all over the place. First of all, just looking at this chart immediately, what you should notice is there are 3 exalted planets. Venus, Sun, and Moon are all exalted. That is not a trifling thing. That is a significant thing. But that's just the beginning of what's going on with Diana. Her Jupiter and her Moon are square. And not only that, they're the only planets that are in Kendra. Kendra are the angles of the chart, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses. So this is something called Gajakeshara Yoga. It's very similar to a Raja Yoga in how it grants success and prominence in a kind of a likable way. Then she has the 5th Lord in the 10th house, right? Because she's got Jupiter and Leo in the 10th house. But that 5th Lord in the 10th house is with a node, and that also forms Raja Yoga. And Raja Yoga is very essential for becoming famous and successful. That's not the only Raja Yoga she has. Her 1st Lord joins the 4th Lord. So the basic way that Raja Yoga is formed is by combining the Lord of a trine with the Lord of an angle. That's the basic rule. And you can see that rule here. The 1st Lord, the Lord of a trine, combining with the 4th Lord, the Lord of an angle. And that is not the end of the Raja Yogas that she has either. She has a house exchange between the 6th and the 8th, which is a special kind of Raja Yoga by a different rule called Viparita Raja Yoga. So Raja Yogas and Gajakeshara Yogas and exalted planets are very important for being successful, and this woman has lots of them. How about the talent? Look at the planets that are exalted. Exalted Moon, exalted Venus, and exalted Sun. So she's got an artistic career. That exalted Moon of hers is aspecting her ascendant. It's not to be ignored. That exalted Venus of hers is in her 5th house, the house of creativity. Furthermore, we always want to connect 11, 3, and 5 for an artist because 11 is performance, 3 is skill, and 5 is creativity. So in her case, her 5th Lord in Raja Yoga is trine to her 11th Lord. And her 3rd Lord, which is also in Raja Yoga, is also linked to her 11th Lord because they're both involved in that house exchange, forming a Raja Yoga between houses 6 and 8. So now you can see how the specifics of an individual chart fine-tune the basic soft focus that you get from interpreting something like Jupiter and Leo in the 10th house. And then that in turn is a fine-tuning of the softer focus that you got just by Jupiter in the 10th house, which is interpreted as being sage-like, transparent, and famous. If you want to understand the whole context of your chart, the soil in which your interpretive seeds grow, then visit my website, vicdecara.com, and click Readings. My complete chart report explains each and every nook and cranny of your chart and will keep you occupied in self-discovery for years. I also have 2 groundbreaking new reports. The first of these, Your Nakshatra, organizes your active nakshatras in order of their importance to you and presents the fundamental interpretations for the planets that occupy them. And the newest report, Star Strength, uses a system called Tarahabala to unfold 90 interpretations of the nuanced relationships between all the planets in your chart, which paints a rich and detailed picture of how your various strengths cooperate or compete with each other. Order these or any of my reports and accelerate your journey to deeper self-understanding.